You're listening to the Connection Care Community Podcast, a podcast designed to help you understand your body more deeply and feel more confident navigating your hormones, cycle, and fertility. Each episode offers grounded, research-informed guidance and integrative tools to support hormone health, embodied awareness, and informed choice. If you're seeking clarity, connection, and a more trusting relationship with your body, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Here's your host, the founder of Connection Care Therapy, Majida.
Hello and welcome to the Connection Care Community Podcast. My name is Majida, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about the cervical current, your body's hidden communication channel. We'll explore how the cervix can act as a messenger between your hormones, your nervous system, and your emotional body. So, as always, hi there. Where do we start this conversation? I think I want to start all the way at the beginning, when I first started learning about checking my cervix position. And as many who pick up, especially a practice like cervical position checks, once you start to feel the changes, you're like, I got this, I understand this. I know that high means that ovulation is coming, and low means that I'm in my luteal phase. That open or close gives me robust amounts of fertility information about my body. It's all simple biology. But then something unexpected starts to happen. At least that's what happened with me. I started to notice that over time, that while my cervix followed the clear cyclical rhythm that I had learned through fertility awareness, rising and softening with estrogen, lowering and firming with progesterone, that there were still these subtle variations day to day. So, for example, after a stressful week, my cervix might feel more tense, even though I was in the same hormonal phase, right? A weekend of deep rest afterwards, and that same tissue would just start to, I would sense it as softer and more receptive. These shifts didn't change my overall fertility pattern, and that's something that I want to make really, really clear. Cervical position checks are a reliable form of checking where you are at in your cycle. But I also want to broach this conversation about how your cervix can teach you something deeper, right? I noticed that my cervix wasn't just responding to my hormones, it was also reflecting my nervous system. It wasn't being inconsistent or wrong in any way. What I realized was that my cervix was alive. The biology was still there, the cycle was still there, but there was also this second, more subtle language, one that spoke in tone and texture and subtle responsiveness. And that's when I began to understand something about my cervix. It's not just a structure that changes with estrogen and progesterone, but it's a living conduit of information that is flowing between my brain and my hormones and my emotional state. So let's talk about the cervix as a nervous system responder. Here's what many anatomy and physiology lessons will leave out, is that your cervix is richly innervated with both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve fibers. It branches particularly in the cervix, into the cervix, and connects with your vagus nerves. So what is the vagus nerves? Your vagus nerve is your body's primary parasympathetic pathway. Right? Parasympathetic is oftentimes connected with your stress system is what is commonly associated with. Parasympathetic activity would be associated with rest and digest, right? Just to kind of lay it out there super simply. So the vagus nerve, is your body's primary parasympathetic pathway, your body's primary rest and digest pathways. It runs from your brainstem all the way through your heart and your lungs, your digestive organs, and it connects to your reproductive system, including your cervix. So what this means is that your cervix doesn't only respond to your reproductive hormones, it also reflects your body's overall state of safety and regulation. So when you're under stress, the sympathetic system becomes more active, right? That stress response system becomes more active, which can subtly influence things like blood flow, tissue tone, sensitivity through the pelvis. The cervix might feel slightly firmer or less responsive, even though its overall position and opening still follow the predictable hormonal rhythms of your cycle. So when the nervous system relaxes into safety, the parasympathetic activation enhances pelvic circulation and receptivity. Many women then notice that the cervix feels softer or more open, not because hormones have changed overnight. Not at all. That's not the way our hormonal system works. But because your tissues are more supple and subtle, right? They're more attuned. They breathe, right, deeper. You are breathing deeper, and your awareness overall becomes more attuned. So I've actually seen this in clients as well. For example, I had a recent client of mine who saw her fertile patterns return more clearly when she began to do more nervous system regulation practices, such as she started therapy. She and I started doing breath work together, and I supported her in developing a structure for herself so that rest became more of a priority. It's not that her cervix wasn't working, quote unquote, right? It was that it was waiting for her body to feel safe enough to fully respond to the signals that were already there. So, very important to note, because this can be a question that comes up in a conversation like this. Your cervix is not fickle, but it is attuned to your hormones first, as well as to your body's state of safety, right? Your body's sense of safety second. It's attuned to both your hormones and your body's safety, right? So your cervix is truly attuned to your entire body, which is why we're talking today about the cervical current. Information is flowing both ways. The cervix doesn't just receive signals, it also sends them. Cervical stimulation, whether that is through gentle touch, breath work, focus on your pelvic bowl, arousal, all of these can activate oxytocin release. Oxytocin is oftentimes called our bonding hormone, the love hormone, but it's also a powerful, powerful regulator of the stress response. It lowers cortisol, it reduces blood pressure, and it signals to your brain that you are safe. So this is the cervical current. Information is flowing in both directions. Your brain and your nervous system influence your cervix, and your cervix also influences your brain and your nervous system. So when we engage the cervix consciously, right, through conscious practices like breath or gentle awareness or mindful touch, we're not just gathering fertility data. We're participating in a feedback loop that can shift how our entire physiological state is working. I learned this very viscerally when I was going through adrenal recovery. I've spoken before in previous podcasts about this time in my life. It was a very, very difficult time. I was deeply exhausted. My adrenals were completely taxed, and my cervix during that time was barely moving throughout my cycle. It was a reflection as to how depleted and dysregulated my system was. And then I started practices, integrating many rest related practices, many nervous system regulation practices, and one of them is called cervical breath work, where I simply brought attention and breath down into my pelvic bowl without even touching my cervix. And just even that awareness, just bringing breath and attention and awareness to that area of my body, something started to shift. I began to notice when I would do cervical breathwork practices that I could feel warmth and a sense of opening, subtle pulsing sensations that I hadn't felt in months. My nervous system was beginning to remember what safety felt like, and when that happened, my cervix started to respond to my hormones again. So the cervix, I often call it the messenger between worlds. In functional medicine, we talk about the bidirectional communication between different body systems. We have the gut and the brain axis, right? The HPA axis, which would be the H stands for hypothalamic, the P stands for pituitary, and the A stands for adrenal. We have the HPO axis, hypothalamic, pituitary, ovarian axis. Right? The cervix sits at the intersection of multiple communication pathways. Hormonal, right? Estrogen softens and opens it up, right? Progesterone firms it and closes it. Oxytocin helps to dilate your cervix during labor. You have your nervous system, right? The vagus nerve, as we just talked about, connects to your sense of safety and threat and social engagement. And the pelvic nerves carry sensations and regulate blood flow, right? There's a connection between your pelvis and your vagus nerves. We have your immune system. Cervical fluid will change in composition based upon immune signaling, filtering pathogens while allowing sperm passage through the fertile windows during their fertile window times. And then we have our emotional connection, where the vagus nerve mediates both cervical function as well as emotional regulation. So you can feel emotionally, right? What you feel emotionally can show up physically in things like we've been talking about, cervical tension and receptivity. So right there, the cervix, we have hormonal, nervous system, immune system, right? And your emotional system. And the cervix is at the intersection of all of those. A consistently low, firm, and non-receptive cervix may reflect more than just low estrogen. Right? Something that I've seen in my practice is that when women are navigating a cervix that is not in motion, right, is not in flow, that it might indicate, as we've talked about, chronic stress. We also got to put unresolved trauma or chronic experiences of trauma that have not been addressed or resolved. You also have thyroid imbalances. The cervix may be communicating subtly about thyroid concerns, or the nervous system that just simply hasn't felt safe enough to prioritize reproduction. A cervix that shifts clearly across the cycle oftentimes signals more than just good hormone levels. It can suggest that your nervous system can toggle between activation and rest. It's a body that feels resourced enough to ovulate. Your cervix, in other words, is telling a story that goes far beyond fertility. So let's talk about how to work with your cervical current and not against it. Once I understood all of what we've been talking about on this podcast, my entire approach to charting started to shift. So instead of just tracking my cervix position mechanically, I started to ask, what else is happening in my body right now? What are my stress levels like? How is my sleep going? Have I been nourishing myself? And this is a big one, right? Do I feel safe in my relationships? The cervix, when you start to ask these kinds of questions, it can then become more than just another data point, right? It can become more of a conversation partner. When my cervix would stay low and firm during what should have been my fertile window, instead of panicking that something was wrong, I would ask myself, what is my body trying to tell me? What support does my nervous system need right now? And often the answer could be pretty simple. Right? Simple, I say that, but we all know, right? It's like, oh, more rest, better boundaries, time in nature, having that difficult conversation that I've been avoiding. Yeah, simple in thought, but oftentimes it can be a bit of a struggle in action, right? But truth be told, oftentimes these are the things that need to be addressed. And once I address those things, my cervix, my system would respond. The current will flow again. So I want to leave you with the practice of cervical breath work, right? It's a simple practice. If you can carve out a few moments for yourself, right, to engage, it can be quite meaningful. If you want to begin to work with your own cervical current, it's important to note you don't actually need to touch your cervix at all. I invite you to start with awareness and with breath. So here's how to get started. Step 1, right? Find a quiet place where you feel safe and lie down, or you can sit comfortably. And then 2, just bringing your attention to your pelvic bowl and notice. Just notice what sensations are there. Release judgment, right? Release tension, open up to warmth, right? But perhaps you experience numbness or pulsing. Just see what's there. And whatever is present is more than okay. And then step 3, begin to breathe. Right? Allow your breath in and out slowly, imagining that your breath is traveling all the way down to your pelvis. No forcing, just a gentle invitation. And as you exhale, then you can imagine your pelvic floor softening. You can imagine your cervix relaxing. And give yourself 5 to 10 minutes here, just noticing what shifts, even if it's subtle. Okay, so simple practice, right? It's a simple practice that engages your vagus nerve. It signals to your nervous system, right, that you're safe to just be here, to breathe, and you can begin to restore your own cervical current when it's been interrupted by stress or by experiences of trauma, right? It's a nice, gentle, simple way to start. So with that, as we close out today, if you are interested in starting to map your cycle, know that we engage this kind of work and much more inside my course, The Cycle Connection. I also do one-on-one sessions where I support folks with identifying their ovulation, even when they have regular patterns, understanding how to adapt FAM for different seasons of your life, whether you're actively trying to conceive or post-pill or postpartum, interpreting your charts when things feel off, and of course, building confidence and trust in your body, what your body is actually saying. So if you want to head on over to my website, connectioncaretherapy.com, or you can head on over to Substack, and all of the links that I speak about in the Substack are there for you to tap into. If you are ready to hop on into some understanding as to what your body might be communicating to you, I do have a whole free resource section on my website where you can go ahead and grab your free ebook. It's called Hormone Harmony. I'll say that a little clearer. Hormone Harmony. My tongue got a little tied. But Hormone Harmony is a really great, simple introduction to syncing your cycle. I also have some really great education in there if you're new to this work. And so go ahead and grab Hormone Harmony. And along with Hormone Harmony, there's a bunch of other free resources that you will get access to in my free resource library, from gut healing stuff to gentle liver and gut detoxification supports that you can start with. So head on over to my website or over to Substack where you can grab your free resources. There is a blog article also, if you're wanting to know more, that I wrote on my website. It's called Fertility Awareness 101. So be sure to check that out. But what's next in this series, as I mentioned before, that this series is part of Cervical Awareness Month, Cervical Health Awareness Month. And in the next post, I'll be exploring practical and integrative strategies to support your cervical health, your hormone balance, from gentle cervical massage to nutrition to mindfulness practices. So if you'd like to be sure to know when that next article is released, head on over to my Substack and be sure to subscribe. And yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I'll share a personal practice that transformed my own relationship with my body, and also invite you to choose one ritual this month to nurture your cervix and notice the difference that you feel. So head on over to Substack, be sure to subscribe. And now your turn. I'd love to know how understanding your cervix might change your hormone health or fertility journey. What if your cervical changes weren't just about your hormones, but they were a conversation that was happening between your brain and your body and your sense of safety? So drop any comments or insights that you have. I'd love to continue to be in connection. Again, be sure to subscribe to my Substack to follow for the full Cervical Health Awareness Month series. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. All right, be well and stay connected.
That does it for this episode of the Connection Care Community Podcast with Majida. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you're leaving with a fresh perspective on your body and overall well-being, along with practical tools you can integrate into daily life. The support doesn't stop here. Be sure to connect with us online at connectioncaretherapy.com for more resources to guide you on your journey. You can also find us on Substack and connect with Majida on Instagram at Majida Sai'da. Remember to rate, review, and share this podcast. And most importantly, stay connected.